Good evening.
Evening.
I call to order the joint public hearing with Town Council and Planning Commission, regular session, Cape Charles Civic Center, 500 Tazewell Avenue, May 3rd, 2022. Roll call, please.
Grossman present.
Holloway present.
Buda present.
McCoy present.
D'Amico present.
Strube present.
We have a quorum. Mr. Mayor?
Did I get a roll call for council?
Bennett present. Bucko is present.
O'Brien present.
Holloway present.
Grossman present.
Let me know we've established a quorum.
We will now have, we'll all stand for a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Join me in the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. Does anyone object to the approval of the consent agenda? Hearing no objection, the consent agenda will be taken by unanimous consent. The Cape Charles Planning Commission will hold a joint public hearing with Town Council on Tuesday, May 3rd at 6 p.m. in the Cape Charles Civic Center, 500 Tazewell Avenue, to receive comment on the following applications. A zoning text amendment 2022-01 application from the town of Cape Charles to amend section 4.2 Boleg J accessory dwelling units and section 2.9 definitions associated with accessory dwelling units. B, a zoning map amendment 2022-01 application from Cape Charles Ventures LLC to conditionally rezone 238 Randolph Avenue, tax map number 83A3-1-625A, from residential 1 to commercial 1, with proffers to limit the commercial activity of said proposed rezoning. And C, a conditional use permit 2022-01 application from Cynthia Emrich and Charles Van Dyke at 420 Randolph Avenue for accessory dwelling unit permit after the fact. At this time, we will hear from the interim zoning administrator on the joint public on zoning text amendment 2022-01 accessory dwelling unit and definitions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I would like to state just for the record formally for the hearing B that we have on the zoning map amendment, I have received the signed proffer statements. They came in late this afternoon, and so we will be entering them into the record formally at that time. So with that said, we are taking up the ADU public hearing first. As you are aware, you've been working for many months now, I think 5 months, on proposed changes to the ADU ordinance. This was referred over to the town council last month to see if we were working in a nature that they felt was supportive of their actions and representative of their actions. They did give the go-ahead and provided some additional feedback to us, which I did include in your staff report, so that you've heard that feedback from town council. We advertise the support for tonight's public hearing. So the essential elements of what we are proposing to do to our accessory dwelling unit, we are looking to add an intent statement. So it's very clear and focused as to why we are adding this section to allow an accessory dwelling unit consideration on a lot in the residential district. Because typically, we have a lot density requirement in our residential districts that establishes what our threshold is for a density. And typically that's one house per, whether it be 5,600 acres, 5,600 square feet, excuse me, or some lesser legal non-conforming square footage allowance. So we wanted to make it clear why this was allowed by the town more than 3 years ago and adopted by the town, and we also wanted to ensure that it became clear to our public at large what our intent and hopefully goal that we are achieving through the creation and allowance of an accessory dwelling unit consideration is intended to happen for our town. With that said, we did want to provide some perspective back on all of this, and so in my staff report that was in your packet for tonight, I did give some clarity as to where that came from in the conversations that we had at the planning commission level to provide some background on that. And part of it is we wanted to emphasize that the ability to provide for an increased housing density allowance on a minimum lot size in the residential district is being offered under very specific conditions and criteria which were identified through the comprehensive plan to help bring additional housing units for long-term rental use to the market to help fill this identified void in our housing market. So we are proposing to add that, and that's in our text changes. Additionally, as we move forward, we were proposing to remove this as a conditional use permit process as well. It initially came in that way because that was felt the best way to help monitor and ensure conformance and compliance with our requirements. We've now had 3 years, roughly 3 years of doing conditional use permits applications for these things. And through that process, and was part of my recommendation to you, which you did agree with, that it really did not glean us any additional information on a particular lot or issues that should arise on a lot-by-lot basis for these, but rather if we just tightened up our criteria, we could handle this through a by right process. And that has a twofold benefit. It reduces the amount of time that the applicant is going through the process. That can take anywhere from 4 to 5 months of going through the process, the public hearing process, planning commission and town council, as well as reducing staff time's commitment to doing all of this work that comes with processing a conditional use permit application, both in terms of its initial review, then the staff reports that have to be written both for the planning commission and then for the town council, as well as all the legal advertisement that we have to do for this, including the adjacent property owner notification letters that have to go out. So there is a fair amount of staff time involved with the processing of each conditional use permit application, whether it be for accessory dwelling unit or for something else. My rough guesstimate and what I provided to you, that runs anywhere from 8 to 10 hours of staff time to make each application move through the system. And we have a lot of work flowing through our office right now, and anywhere we can help improve our operating conditions, we want to take advantage of that. And we do feel through a by right zoning permit that would be issued as part of this, that we can still track it appropriately, keep it in concert with our treasurer's office and their tracking responsibilities for tax collection purposes, and working in concert with the building official. We felt we could handle that. So yes, we are recommending the removal of this as a conditional use permit requirement and become a by right use with some improved criteria as part of this amendment. Additionally, I think the other substantial change that we did is we added some increased and improved definitions associated with the bedroom, with the kitchen, with the sleeping area, and one more, but I can't remember it off the top of my head.
Well, there was, and this may be on a different topic on your agenda, but there was also the increase in stay time.
I'm coming to that.
Okay,
So-
that's fine.
So we felt if we could improve those definitions, that would help eliminate some inconsistency that was occurring from the zoning side of the table versus the building side of the table. So if we make it really clear what the zoning requirements are, that would establish the threshold that we all have to follow on this, regardless of whether the building official has a slightly different review standard. The zoning standard will trump as to how we do the enforcement and the application of such. So with those elements pretty much, I think, settled down, the last conversation piece that the planning commission had through this process was, is the 30-day stay requirement sufficient? And then as part of that, we also ended up in a conversation, should we look at some other criteria such as residency requirements of the owners on one or of the other, one of the two units they would have to be residing in? I raise that because I don't want anyone to think we didn't consider these things. We actually did consider it. We did extensive research through Virginia localities as to what they are doing for their accessory dwelling units. And we came back to saying we think a 60-day requirement, minimum stay requirement, was necessary. We felt that really put home the message, these are not meant to be short-term rentals, they are not meant to be that 1 week or 2 week stay. They are meant to be a longer-term rental capacity available in our community. We are trying to make it clear these are not meant to be overflow for any family or guests that you have coming in. These are really meant to be truly rental, long-term rental units for this market, both whether it be for tenants, whether it be for employees that work within in the town limits or within the county limits. People who need that additional housing. It could be, you could rent it to a member of your family, but it needs to have a lease, and there needs to be a long-term capacity of 60 days or more shown in that lease. You may not charge your family member anything, and that's really generous, something my parents would never do for me, but that's okay. But with that said, we felt establishing an increase of that occupancy requirement would be essential to, again, underscoring our intent statement and driving home why we are putting this in play and why the town council was putting this in play. When we came back to the residency requirement, meaning if you are the owner of this property, should you have to live at least in the principal unit, and you could then lease out or rent out the accessory structure, or vice versa, live in the accessory structure and rent out the principal unit. We noted that there were many, many examples of people who own more than one property in this community and reside in this community. And we did not want to penalize those people who've chosen to invest multiple occasions here in this community. And we felt that was not something that we were prepared to recommend to town council at this point in time. We felt let's make these revisions, let's keep the ordinance this way, and we think we are on the right track to get a better implementation of the ADU ordinance as intended.
One comment. It might be helpful. Good.
Speak up.
Oh. One comment.
Loud.
One comment. Help the audience understand that this does not trump pre-existing CUP implementations. It's from the point in time this thing is enforced forward.
From the moment town council may choose to make an adoption of any changes to the zoning text
Right.
ordinance,
Right.
and that's when it would become effective.
Right.
Yes,
And it's going to be effective for all future applications.
that's correct.
Thank you.
So, as I mentioned, we felt if we cleaned up some of the criteria associated with this, it would also help us. So, we've already mentioned the definition cleanup, we mentioned the process, and now the occupancy timeframe. We did a few minor other tweaks to this that we felt would help in the implementation of this. One being that ADUs need to have their own trash receptacles separate from the main house. We felt that it needs to be really clear that this is a separate structure from the main house, and they need to have their own elements associated with it, which includes the trash generation that comes from that unit should be collected in its own unit. And that also provides us another way of tracking and ensuring we're not seeing excessive overcrowding of that ADU. That will help us do a slight monitoring of that. Additionally, we did respond to the fact that we currently are requiring annual inspections from the building official of these units, and we felt we could change that around a little bit. So we have drafted, and I do have a draft available for everyone if you'd like to have one. Let me just pull those out for a second. An annual safety inspection checklist and affidavit. So if you can pass those down and throw them to the town council as well. This would be a document if we find that we are moving this direction with the zoning text changes. We would then require all new ones coming on board would have to complete this annually and would have to bring this into us in that mid-May. We were thinking around April 15th, no later than May 1, I think is what we put in the ordinance. So we would circulate this out, get them to complete this inspection checklist, return it to us, and then we still include the provision that the building official can go out and randomly conduct the inspection if he is still concerned with the answers coming back in, or the validity of what he's seeing or observing on the property or have heard along the way. So we have not relinquished the building official having the right to go in and do a safety inspection if one is called for, but we also trying to put some onus on the property owners to go through and check these things as well. We're asking them to do an affidavit and certify this information, so that we're putting some onus upon them to ensure their property is ready for this sort of responsibility. And then additionally, if you do adopt these ordinance changes, I will then craft a similar affidavit, ensuring zoning compliance, has happened and getting that submitted to us annually as well. So we are expecting, as part of this process, 2 affidavits will be coming in for every property involved, certifying this information to us and putting some, again, some onus on them that they acknowledge and understand these are the rules that they have to apply by. So I think that covers the main significant changes and why we made those changes. I hope it gives you additional information that everybody can understand. We had extensive and lengthy dialogue over the last 5 months on this particular issue. So, any questions from the commission?
Katie, just one quick administrative thing. Very bottom on the back page, take out the third D.
Yeah, I'll take all that out. I'll eventually add the
Okay.
signature lines and the affidavit
Yeah.
statement and the whole works. It's a draft, I just don't want you to forget. Yeah, I still gotta put those things
Okay.
in there. Yes, but thank you.
Sure.
This is not for discussing minor changes, we're gonna do that still at a later date, right?
No, it would be this evening.
Because did we ever approve it and send it to town council?
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
So,
You did that at your last meeting in April, and I went to the town council meeting in mid-April.
Okay, because I know we talked about that a
Or
little bit.
March, sorry, it was March. I'm off a month. I apologize.
We did talk about that a little bit, so, okay.
Yes.
all right.
Question. So initially, the building inspector will come and inspect it?
No.
Never.
Well,
Well,
when they're brand new, when a new structure is
That's-
coming online, yes, there is an inspection that will happen. Typically, in most new residential constructions, most new constructions, but residential, you go to achieve a certificate of occupancy from the building official. As we learned from him during these deliberations, he would not actually issue a certificate of occupancy for an accessory structure of this nature, but he is going to create a new permit type from his office called a certificate of completion, which will equate to the same thing for the accessory structure, as it would for principal.
that he will issue
Yes, that he will issue.
after his inspection.
Yes, that is
Okay.
that's what will happen once you achieve the compliance inspection from him. He will issue a certificate of completion, which will be similar to a certificate of occupancy for a house. And that moving forward then serves as the basis of the elements that need to be in the house. The carbon monoxide alarms, the smoke detectors, the windows, the egresses, all of those things that he approved in the construction of that accessory structure.
Any other comments from commissioners?
I had just one comment. I know that we talked about this, to have this notarized. We need to make sure it doesn't put a burden on the residents, so we need to make sure as a town that we have notaries available to be able to do that. And I think we do,
I
right?
think we now have 3 notaries within the town, 4 notaries within the town hall itself. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, no comments from town council? Do we have any public comments on this? Okay.
Let me see if they signed up for this, so we can see here. One for this particular sheet. I think we have some written comments on this.
Do I have one?
It says, "I am Sam Jones and my wife and I live at 538 Monroe Avenue. Thank you for your work to clarify issues regarding accessory dwelling units in town. In reviewing the proposed language, it does not appear to adequately address the personal use of ADUs by the property owner. To address this issue, I suggest the following language be added at the end of the proposal. Nothing in this ordinance shall prevent or restrict the by right use of an accessory dwelling unit by the homeowner to house family members or family guests at the homeowner's discretion and with no time requirements. Thank you for considering this additional language. Sam Jones, 538 Monroe Avenue."
Is that it?
That is it.
Thank you. Okay, so you want to give a recommendation here?
So I am recommending that the planning commission consider, all the comments received. I would recommend that you recommend favorable approval to town council of the proposed zoning text amendment. And again, the document looks like this. And we are proposing additions in red. We have proposed to strike out certain items that are shown in a blue strikeout, sorry, a black strikeout. So all of those are what we were proposing to council to consider amending the zoning ordinance by.
Just a point of order, with regards to the public hearings, are we going to go through, typically we'll have our public hearing, the applicants and discussion, but are we going to go through all the public hearings so that town council can get that out of the way? They don't necessarily need to sit and listen to all our arguments, although they'll probably be
That
entertained and
probably is-
educated as they
Yes,
sit there.
yes, they are aware of that.
Okay.
So,
We were aware, but we didn't really have a comment on it, but I think it should be, we go through a public hearing, we dismiss, planning commission do the thing.
right. So, do I have a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
Second.
I haven't said it yet.
What she said.
I said, I'm gonna make a motion.
Well, you gotta spit it out, lady.
Well, I was just getting ready to, sorry. Let me spit it out now.
Go ahead.
I make a motion that the proposed zoning text amendments to section 4.2J accessory dwelling units and section 2.9 definitions be deferred. The planning commission was tasked with determining if the ordinance was working as intended, and that has not been accomplished. Further discussion and review is needed.
Do I have a second? Okay, I do not have a second. The motion fails. Do I have another recommendation from the commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we favorably recommend this adoption be sent to town council for their consideration for changes to section 4.2J and section 2.9 for definitions.
Do I have a second?
A second?
Discussion.
Yes. Yeah, one of the things that we really didn't start with, which I thought we should have, was what are the problems we're trying to solve through accessory dwelling units? We don't really know the current scope of the problem. When we first met, either Debbie Pocock or Jeb Brady said there were 12 of them in town. I don't know how many we have now, and I don't know how many are pending. So what is the problem? Also, by making it by right, that means every single person in the town who can meet setback requirements and those sorts of things can have an accessory dwelling unit. So if you have 500 houses in town, you could ostensibly have an additional 500 accessory dwelling units. Are we sure that's what we want? What would that do to our population, to expenses to the town, to the staff's time and ability to enforce this, to parking problems, to taxes? We really haven't looked at any of that. Also, it only affects RE, R1, R2, and CR zoning. That's the historic district. So it does not affect Bay Creek, which I understand Bay Creek is a planned unit development and things are different, but that does put the onus on the historic district to handle this particular problem. So should we perhaps look at including Bay Creek in some way to help with the problem. And what would that do to them? What would be the effect on them? We have some changes in our definitions. It's funny, if you look at this in depth, you'll see that all the criteria that's supposed to make this so much better for the staff to enforce, it's really not that different from what we already have. And I find that a lot of it is not doing what it needs to do. And let me get to where I want to be. All right. First of all, the statement of intent bothers me a little bit in that it says we want to add to the diversity of housing type to allow an increased density in specific zoning districts, as I mentioned. But the reason is to assist in meeting the housing needs of the town. Well, we haven't spelled out those needs. Are we looking for workforce housing? Are we looking for affordable housing? Are we looking for both? Are we looking for long-term vacation rentals? It's not clear what we're looking for. Again, one of the things you'll notice, people don't understand what an accessory dwelling unit is. And we already have a letter today speaking to this, and that letter said they want to make sure that we add that you can use them for your relatives anytime you want, regardless of the length of stay. That is not what they are for. You cannot do that. If you want to do that, then maybe we need to change accessory dwelling units to something else that provides that for you. But this does not provide this for you. This is really rental. Also, we should think about, do we want to make it so that your accessory dwelling unit can be rented long-term, but the house on the property can also be rented that short-term, and the owner live in England? And that's happening more and more. So that's something we need to decide. Maybe we do want that. That's fine, but we didn't discuss that. Let's see. Also, definitions. We had a really interesting discussion about definitions, and one of them was a kitchen, which was a kitchen. The definition is a sink and like a cutting board. A bathroom definition is a sink and a toilet. What's missing? A shower. And a sleeping area is not necessarily a bedroom. So when I think of bedroom, I think of walls, but a sleeping area doesn't have to have walls. If you look at the parking requirements for accessory dwelling units, it calls for 1 space per bedroom. So if you have a sleeping area of 3 bunk beds, you would be able to house 6 people in that accessory dwelling unit. How many parking spaces would you require? Is that 1 or 6? So there are things that we haven't found in the ordinance that are affected by this that we need to discover before we make the changes. There's really no big hurry to get this done. It should be done right, not fast. Let me see if I have anything else, and then I will pass it on. I think I'll pass it on. Thank you.
Further discussion?
But, I have 2 other comments. It's in this, correct me if I'm wrong, but, families are excluded, is that correct?
No,
It's not for families?
that's wrong.
Okay, then, all right. And the other one then is about, it shouldn't have the appearance of a house.
The exterior.
The exterior, right.
Yep.
And there are pictures of what is right and wrong, that we can apply that to make sure that that isn't happening.
Well, that's captured through the Historic District Review Board.
I didn't know the historic district could speak to things in a backyard. Has that changed? No, they haven't always been able to do that.
Okay. So, So families can, that's good, okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, so we have a motion for recommendation and review and consideration to town council, a favorable consideration of recommending approval of the changes proposed to date to zoning text amendment 2022-01 to amend section 4.2, Bolegs J, and section 2.9, definitions of the Cape Charles zoning ordinance for accessory dwelling units. And we have a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, before you move on, we were explained as council that the staff report was going to be read, the public was going to be comment, and then we were going to move on. So the next two this is a public hearing for us, not your all's meeting. So the next two will go through it, and then you all can have your meeting as we adjourn.
Next is a public hearing on the zoning map amendment 2022-01 application from Cape Charles Ventures LLC to conditionally rezone 238 Randolph Avenue, tax map number 83A3-1-625A from residential 1 to commercial 1 with proffers to limit the commercial activity of said proposed zoning.
Okay, so we have an application from Cape Charles Ventures LLC. As I referenced, we also received this afternoon from the applicant who signed voluntary proffer statement. I have one for town council as well. I do want to make it clear this, because again, this is not something that the town encounters often, are conditional rezonings and proffer statements. So I do want to do just a little bit of education so everybody's clear on this. What the applicant has chosen to do is, instead of just petition for a rezoning of one zoning designation to another, they are proposing to do that, but conditions they are willing to self-impose upon themselves. We cannot require these of them. We have been working and having conversations with them to see if we can make them as clear as possible to address what are some of the identified issues and concerns with this proposal. And they have responded accordingly. And so that is the document we have before you as well. So the subject property is with a street address of 238 Randolph Avenue, which is the hotel itself. Within the proffers, they do include conditions that would provide benefit not only to 238 Randolph, but also to adjacent properties, including 235 Mason, 227, 231, 239, and 241 Mason would also are identified to receive some element of benefit through the proper conditions. They've also provided us the revised site plan, which has been handed out to each of you this evening on the dais that looks like this. I have highlighted a few of the changes from what was in the packets that were provided to you to what is presented to us today. So with that said, I do want to go through what are the proffers that they're speaking on. Specifically, they're looking to utilize this property at 238 Randolph, which is directly behind the hotel itself, and to utilize it for deliveries of propane and other service-related deliveries for the hotel parcel and the properties of 227, 231, 239, and 241 Mason. I've been through this list with the applicant to make sure I understand which properties these are. Some of them may be tenants within the hotel itself, some may be adjacent to as well. We also been talking extensively about how trash collection and delivery of that and collection of said is occurring on the property, which is one of the strong issues that came forward that led to this coming forward to the applicant, both first as a violation component, and then is proposing to resolve it in several different means, the latest being this rezoning application. As part of it, he's also included in the proffer, per my suggestion to him, that he may still be interested in acquiring an adjacent property on 7 Strawberry Street. And if that acquisition should move forward and become part of the hotel proper itself, they have included reference to that as being also a beneficiary of this proper condition with the trash collection component. But again, would not be a beneficiary if they do not acquire the property or bring it into the hotel use in some capacity. They also included a proper statement regarding the storage and staging of the golf carts and the charging stations associated with said on the property. And they've also included specific criteria and plan with landscaping and screening for this property as well. So to go through this, everyone is aware of this. There's many parcels associated with this. So the hotel itself is located here on Mason, and it is encompassed of a total of I think it's now 3 buildings that have been come together as a whole over many years. And the parcel in question for rezoning is the one behind it, sorry, right here, in this little white, what looks like white gravel, which is white gravel, is the residential one that he is proposing to get rezoned. He has, and the town has known and has tacitly allowed it to be used for some of these expansion services of the hotel itself, both for the storage of items where the trash receptacles have been placed as well, and get rolled out onto Randolph Avenue for collection on the Tuesday collection days. Definitely as the hotel has continued to do well and have great occupancy rates and looking now for potential expansion in the near future, we can see that those services are going to have greater growth and demand, and we need to plan accordingly. And definitely we heard from some of the ancillary property owners that they were not in favor of that because they felt this is a residential zoning district. So this has brought this now to a head for the community to consider how best to address this. I did want to stress one of the elements that really structured this as a whole, and Mr. Gamino has indicated this in his application. Across that residential lot, there is an 8-foot easement already there to the town. And that easement occurred before Mr. Gamino took ownership of this lot, and it came as a result of the need to supply water and sewer services into these Mason Avenue properties. And so that was granted. It is a limitation on the development of that residential lot as well, so I want to make you aware of that. So, as I said, we have the site plan from him, so I want to spend just a minute walking ourselves through it. So, I think up to now, the trash cans had been placed over here at some point, somewhere down over here along the way, sometimes over here. And as I said, they get rolled out on Tuesdays and moved down here onto the sidewalk, or onto the road of Strawberry Street, and placed up there for collection. And I no fault of anyone, but just like everyone in town, if you don't immediately pick them up, sometimes they get blown over by the wind and maybe unseemly, unsightly, et cetera. So we recognize this is a real issue, and so this is one of the key concerns that we hope to address with Mr. Gamino in this process. So yes, through his proffers, we have worked to try and make this the most amenable plan possible moving forward, if this should get favorably approved by the town. So with that said, he had included in his initial application to the town that he would like to stage 6 golf carts. I know in one of the versions of the site plans, there was an increased number in the drawing. We asked him to bring it back to what he had initially asked for, and that is what is shown now and reflected in his proffer statement, space for 6 golf carts. He's also included that there can be bicycle parking there as well, which is, again, seems a complimentary and innocuous request at this point. Again, initially when you saw the site plan, we were looking at enclosure to house maybe up to 15 trash cans, trash receptacles. We felt there has to be a better solution to this. That's a lot of trash cans, and we recognize the full need for it as well. So yes, we have been working with him to preserve and explore other options here. So right now, we are looking at a dumpster of some sort further back on the property itself. There would be some type of enclosure to keep it screened to some extent, but also easily accessible by the trash collector. In this case, it is a third-party vendor that does the trash collection. That would not be part of the typical town collection responsibilities. Those would be costs incurred by the property owner to have the dumpster picked up at his own expense. So that relieves quite a few things for us, both how that looks visually for the adjacent property owners, as well as pulling it out onto the sidewalk. It doesn't have to be pulled onto the sidewalk at all, like the trash cans would have to be. This way it stays fully on this lot and further back on this lot, and it really is not imposing upon the entire neighborhood of so many trash cans. It's clearly in a residential area, that probably no other residence has that many trash cans available or used for their own property. As we mentioned, he has already proposed landscaping, and some of that has already moved forward without us requiring it or instituting it at this point. He has moved forward, trying to address some of these concerns. I did talk with him further this afternoon, after speaking with our building official, who is also affiliated with the fire department. We are gonna ask that one of those shrubs come out from the entrance area, because we think an 8-foot access or travel path onto that property is a little too narrow, especially for fire trucks.
Yeah.
So if we're going to do this, then we need to have at least 9.5 feet clearance to allow a fire truck to get onto that lot properly. And with that, that means, I know he's also potentially proposing a little sign at the front of the property, so again, that also would move over on the site plan as well. So those are the specific changes from what was in your packet to what is now in the site plan that came in this afternoon. With that said, I do want to kind of walk through our considerations that we need to do for any rezoning application. And I did write about this extensively in our staff report. As I said, this all came about primarily from a violation complaint that came into our office that we have now been working pretty much since the end of last summer with the applicant to see how this can best be resolved. So, the things that we need to do when we look at a rezoning. We need to see how this is in respect to our comprehensive plan. It's our primary governing doctrine as to what our vision and intent is for the growth of the community, as well as the land use of all of our land within the town. The comp plan, I can't say is on point to this particular application, but I think it does have enough information in it. It sets a clear policy statement throughout the whole document, which is the fact that Cape Charles is a distinguished historical, residential, and commercial area district. And it repeats that throughout. There are numerous references and citations to this, and the need for our comp plan to recognize, preserve, and retain that district composition. And it is noted again and again that this is a late 19th and early 20th century character, and it's a key element in the town's interest and attractiveness to residents and tourists. It is important that the town's historic character be protected, not only for its intrinsic value, but also to continue to attract and expand tourism in Cape Charles. I do also offer a counterpoint that we have recognized that there needs to be a commercial base in our comp plan, and that is our downtown area, and it is the C1, or what everybody knows as Mason Avenue, as our commercial district. And tourism is a key component of our tourism economy and our economic economy. They go hand in hand, and yes, the district plays a role in bringing tourists here to our community and driving that sort of investment, both from a tourism perspective as well as sometimes converting into a long-term residential perspective of bringing new residents into our community as well. So there is a little bit of conflict that we can look to in our comp plan to say, well, there is some support to ensure we take steps to ensure the growth and vitality of the commercial district as well. But I don't think our comp plan has really addressed or identified that the C1 district may be at capacity and may be hitting issues that require us to revisit or rethink its planning. Its planning happened in the 1890s. We may need to rethink that now. I don't think there's been sufficient time nor investment spent through our comprehensive plan to address some of the issues that are now facing us today. And so that is where I am from a staff perspective, concerned that our comp plan does not fully support this proposal as it stands today. I recognize he's got real issues, and he will not be the only commercial entity coming forward to this community over the next 5 to 10 years.
And this particular property has history with in the past doing what's best for him, and in the present doing what's best for everybody, the town in particular. So he's changing behavior, for lack of a better term. in trying to do the right thing.
Through
That's
this or
simple.
through some other behavior?
I'm sorry.
If I can I finish this
Oh, yes,
staff
sir.
report first?
Go ahead.
So then if you have additional questions, we can go through that.
Yes, yeah, go ahead.
So with that said, I've also now gone to our zoning ordinance, which is the next area we need to be looking at. And I've identified the statements of intent both for the R1 district, which is the subject of consideration this evening where this parcel is, as well as the district he would like it to go to, which is the C1 district. Again, what is unique about his request is he is doing it as a proffered conditional rezoning. So he is not saying he wants all of the uses allowed by right in the C1 district. He is willingly going to restrict what those uses will be. So I think that is a step forward in the right direction to help limit it. But again, I think this is a larger conversation that I feel needs to happen at the community level. Are we prepared and ready to adjust what has been known as a very clear definition of a district here? C1 is Mason, for the most part. There's some expansion on some of the side streets of Pine and Strawberry. One other, but I can't. Peach, thank you. But it's been very, very small and restricted. And so if we're looking to look at an expansion, I know it does set us open that we need to be having this conversation throughout all of Mason and what happens. It did get dark in here, didn't it?
Yes, it did, yes. Yeah.
And what happens in the future when other properties are coming into these similar constraints of the use of their property that is contrary to their being able to do expansion, and an expansion that we may be supportive of.
Yeah.
I think we have all identified, and I've heard in very, very strategic meetings, the need for additional lodging spaces is vital for this community and needs to happen. But we are now limited as to where that can be placed and provided for us. So, the other component that we need to do is how does this impact the adjacent properties? Clearly, as we have seen, there's an inclusion of the adjacent properties on Mason as part of this proposal willingly. I think they have shown that they also have this need and issue, and without a cooperative partnership with the hotel, they also would be struggling to provide these very services that would limit their operational capabilities. So from that end, from the Mason Avenue neighborhood, I think they are supportive of this. However, from the residential neighborhood on Randolph, and clearly the two properties that are most impacted by this request, we've had some concerns expressed. I do know we're gonna have read into the record correspondence from both the property owners, one not supportive of this, one now supportive of this. The property has changed hands from the prior owner who purchased it last summer. That has since sold sometime this spring, and we now have heard from the new owner who is telling us that they are supportive of this application. So there is concern about this as a whole. I have not reached out specifically to those across the street if they have any concerns. It was included as a public advertisement, so they do have the right hopefully to be here this evening to weigh in on this issue to make us aware of it. But I don't take this analysis lightly. Because once you do this, it's a long-term impact, and clearly the Randolph Avenue properties have lived as a neighbor to the Mason Avenue properties, the commercial activities. And they have learned about some of these things and have learned how to work and be cooperative partners with this. But as they continue to grow and expand, there are these ancillary side effects that I think are going to encroach upon their expectations. Definitely the trash issues and how that flows over into the residential neighborhoods, as well as some of the ancillary services that the hotel is seeking to offer its guests, that maybe they don't have to offer, but they're choosing to, and they are creating some of this ripple effect, meaning the golf carts, et cetera. So with that said, I'm happy to answer any questions, but ultimately, I cannot recommend this to you, just because I do feel it is not supported by the comp plan. And I felt if we could make some proposed changes to the comp plan and bring that forward to the community at large, and see if they are willing to support that as an amendment to the comp plan, I think I could get there, but I just can't get there today.
I have a question, and this may be a little off base, but hear me out. It goes to the text of the proffers. He wants to rezone.
Dennis, we can't hear you.
Oh, sorry.
Sit forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question. It goes to the text of the proffers, the rezoning in particular. There are, well, let me state what I understand, then you can rebut accordingly. We have to be very careful of spot zoning. And I want to make sure that the proffers don't put us into a situation where we have to defend what is essentially spot zoning. Anything else other than that, I mean, I understand he's trying to meet a business need. That's fully understood. And he's doing the best he can with what he's got to, come to town with solutions. Even though we're still a little off the mark, we're heading in the right direction. You care to speak to that?
Sure. I actually do not view this as spot zoning.
Okay.
And I say this because when I brought you back to the aerial map of this corner. So commercial is all the way here on Mason, but there's also commercial that runs down Strawberry Street. So you're actually not that distant away from commercial zoning.
Okay.
Granted, yes, as I mentioned, that commercial zoning has stayed within the side streets, framing each block.
Right.
And it's only on 2 blocks that this occurs in your commercial corridor. So I don't view this really as split zoning or sorry, spot zoning. My brain is just tired. Spot zoning, I think it is consistent with what he's looking to do in a reasonable manner as best he could through the proffers.
Yep, okay.
You also have Pine Street too.
Right, Pine Street on the other side of this, I just don't have it on the map, you're right. So this block and then as Peaches we reference is also, it goes down the side street for that as well for commercial zoning.
Yeah.
So,
So you're introducing, are you done, first of all?
yes, it's up to questions
So
from the commissioners.
we'd like to hear from the applicant.
Are there any further questions of me at this point, or are we good to hear from the applicant?
Any questions?
Just one question about the back boundary of the lot on the diagram that you gave us. Is the lot line behind the dumpster? Just need to make sure that,
The lot line, no, all of this is the residential lot.
could you do it up there?
All of this is the residential lot.
Okay, so that line behind the dumpster is, a few feet off the dumpster is the,
Is the residential, the residentially zoned lot today, yes, the lot in question.
Any other questions of the zoning administrator?
I do have one. If we decide not to rezone this, then what he's doing here is not allowable in that zoning district, so would he have to move all of this?
You don't decide if this gets rezoned or not, town council.
I
does.
know, I'm sorry.
And yes, we would continue to work with him to address these ongoing violations. If it is not rezoned, then the town will continue to work with him how best to address these violations.
Okay.
Yes.
So as you said, we need to rethink this.
I didn't say that.
Oh, yes, you did. You need, no, good.
I said, I am not in a position as your staff to recommend, your favorable consideration of this at this point in
Right,
time,
yeah, we think
because I do not think the comp plan fully supports it.
Right,
So,
but in terms of this whole issue.
Well, she said pretty clearly that the comp plan was written with a different view of how land was being used than what this situation brought to the surface, largely, right? So we need, you know,
Yeah.
it's a, yeah, possible consideration for a tweak to the comp plan.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Katie, and those 2 lots that are on the, we go back to the residential aerial, is it the 2 lots or a single lot? Because based on the zoning map, it looks like it's the 2 lots that are on the corner. Straight back almost is,
It's
way-
this, and I think, I don't know if it's all 3 of these.
I think it's either 3 or 2, just so you're aware, it's not
Right.
a single lot.
Right,
It's multiple
you're right,
lots.
there's some blocks, because there was a subdivision of this kind of parcel.
Correct.
All right, and I'm pointing, this whole parcel ended up in a subdivision many, many years ago, and then created these individual lots there. So So it gets a little funky, especially when we don't maintain our own GIS to know the specific parcels that were intended involved.
Exactly. I just want to make everybody aware that there were multiple lots there.
And again, this building here is 7 Strawberry Street, that is commercially zoned. So there's, again, we can see even the back half, which falls into this 3rd lot, is commercially zoned. I do know that, I haven't done the research fully on these 3. So the applicant is here, if you'd like
Yep,
to.
so if the applicant would like to come forward and please state your name and
Good evening, it's David Camino. I haven't met all of you, but it's nice to meet the ones that I haven't met.
Make sure you speak into the mic.
Sure, thank you. So first of all, thank you very much for, allowing me to make this presentation tonight. And thank you to Ms. Nunez. We obviously disagree on where we are right now, but I've said it before, she's an outstanding zoning administrator, and I've dealt with a lot of zoning administrators in my career as a developer. So she's very professional, and she has worked with me to the extent that she can, given her position that this request is not consistent with the comprehensive plan that the town currently has. And
Please speak a little louder. It
Sure.
looks like people aren't able to hear you.
Okay, sorry. And insofar as your question a moment ago, where you asked, where does this leave us with respect to, what is if we don't do this? Well, that's the question really at hand, because I have a notice of violation and corrective order that was served on me today, which is part of this process. I understand that. But this is this indicates to me that basically if the property's not rezoned, then from February 10th moving forward, then I am in violation, and I'm going to be sanctioned as such and fined as such, and that will continue until such time as I alleviate these issues. And my dilemma is I can't alleviate the issues and operate the hotel. I need garbage delivery taken off the hotel to operate the hotel, and I need propane delivery to operate the hotel. The Cape Charles Coffee House needs propane delivery to operate. The businesses that we allow to use for trash, they need trash services. The fire department needs access to the back of the building. But before I actually get to the substance of what I'd like to say to you, beyond that, is the first thing I want to do is, and I'm sorry if this makes you uncomfortable, Mrs. Loomis, I just want to apologize to you, because I had put in my original submission that Mrs. Loomis was not opposed to my rezoning this, and I'm an attorney by trade, and I certainly wouldn't put a public document out with a misrepresentation like that. And I sincerely thought that, in fact, you were not opposed to this. I've had lots of conversations with her about lots of different things, and if I was confused about that, I apologize profusely. I absolutely did not mean to misrepresent that to anyone, and I'm sorry I did that, so please forgive me. So what I'd like to first say is that the report that you've received indicates that Ms. Nunez can't support this because it's not consistent with the comprehensive plan, and I understand that. But what I would say, sort of more importantly, at the conclusion of that report, she indicates, basically, there's going to be a reckoning that the town needs to make. There needs to be further study about the interaction between the commercial district and the residential district, and this must be studied further, and we may wish to create a new zoning district to address this situation in a uniform and comprehensive way. Well, I agree with that, yes. The question is, what do we do in the meantime? Because what I've proffered to do is what I would respectfully submit is put forth a framework for what maybe this new zoning district might, this light commercial district might look like. Because we are doing everything that we reasonably can do to mitigate the commercial activity that is necessary for the operation of the business. And that would be the sort of the template, I would think, that the town would look to if, in fact, this unique situation presented itself again. And I can't emphasize enough that this is a unique situation, that I've been operating this way for 10 years without a single complaint until an investor bought a house a year ago and renovated it and flipped it. And they lodged a complaint. So for 10 years, there has been no complaints from people in the Wilson building. There have been no complaints from people across the street. There have been no complaints from my neighbors, because we have been super, super conscientious about the fact that we are doing some activities there that can be characterized as commercial. So one complaint, and that is really why we're here, what created this, but we do have to resolve this. I recognize that, and I recognized it when I spoke with Ms. Nunez, but I didn't know what the solution was, and I recognized it when I decided that I was going to purchase 7 Strawberry Street and try to expand the hotel. So I would submit, first of all, that yes, she can't recommend to you that you allow this rezoning, because it's for the sole reason that it's not consistent with the comprehensive plan, with the caveat that, in fact, we are going to have to, the town, in planning, in zoning, is going to have to address this at some point. And I would submit that what we have proffered is the absolute best way that we can do a light commercial there. So where that leaves me then is, how did I arrive at this situation? And, I purchased the hotel and the lot, but the lot actually, the county and the town allowed that residential lot to be split many years ago into a 32-foot lot and an 8-foot lot. And that 8-foot lot was used exclusively as an alley. So there has been a sort of de facto use of that lot to service Mason Avenue for 20 or 30 years at least. And when I took it over, I consolidated those two. And actually, one thing that Ms. Nunez stated that was not correct, that she's probably not aware of, that 8-foot easement, I granted that to the town. I gave that to the town because the Cape Charles Coffee House was about to close because they needed a sewer line. So I installed a sewer line across my property and down that alley for the coffee house and the town to keep that business. And I did so because I had no intention of ever developing that lot, because I couldn't develop the lot. So I've got a lot that's got a sewer lateral on it, an 8-foot easement for the town, a 1,000-amp transformer that the town allowed me to put on the lot, and a 1,000-gallon propane tank that services the hotel. I recognize that the comp plan talks about retaining the historic character of the residential district, but you can't recreate the historic character of the residential district on this lot. The lot's future is vacant. I can't build a house there, nor can anyone else. I can't sell it because it's got a transformer on it, it's got a propane tank in it, and the fire department needs to be able to get to the back of Mason Avenue. I recognize that there is an impact on the people that live next to me. I understand that, and I'm doing absolutely everything I can. And for 10 years, I didn't think that there was any problem. I didn't think that Mrs. Loomis had a problem with it. I didn't think anybody in the Wilson building had a problem with it. Now, I think a lot of people are under some of the people that have written letters in opposition to this that live in the Wilson building are under the impression that somehow the fact that I'm going to buy 7 Strawberry Street and build 40 feet up, it's got something to do with this lot. It doesn't. They're two distinct issues. I am merely trying to operate a business in in the most harmonious way I possibly can and have had for 10 years, and have, brought, you would be amazed, almost 80,000 people to the town of Cape Charles, which equates to about $7 to $10 million in gross revenue to the town, not just the hotel, to the town. I can't operate without that lot. I don't know what to do without the lot being rezoned. It's not hyperbole. That's really the fact of the matter. And I am narrowly tailoring this request and trying to make it so that I can get along with my neighbors and I can operate the business and I can help the other Mason Ave businesses as well. So I would really implore you to please look favorably upon this rezoning, because candidly, I don't know what I'm going to do if it's not rezoned. I don't know how to operate the business otherwise. I'd be happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
Commission have any questions of the applicant?
Are you saying that there are two things you absolutely must have, and that is propane and, I'm sorry, what was it?
Trash.
Trash. So you must have two things.
I must have two things.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
We do have several speakers signed up. The first is Steve Loomis.
Steve Loomis. Please state your name and your address, and you have 3 minutes.
Absolutely. My name is Steve Loomis. I live at 628 Washington Avenue. First and foremost, thank you all for allowing us to have this meeting tonight. I want to speak against rezoning. I don't think anybody else in this room would want to have a commercial lot in between two residential lots, first and foremost. That's the main point I want. Now, I'd like to try to educate everyone on that property and that lot and that block. Because there's only one other person in this room, and that's my mother right there, that knows more about that block than I do. The 8-foot easement has been there since the 1924 Sanborn lots. You can look that up on, right down there at the town hall. And that easement was there to get to the back of those buildings to pick up trash. All my life, that lot, that easement, down behind Watson's was an easement. And then at the end of the block by the town property that goes in behind the Parsons building was an easement that was used for trash, propane, fuel oil, coal, whatever was needed for those businesses. Just to give you a little history of how all of that was used. The corner two lots are commercial. That was a hotel from way back. That goes back probably to the 1910 Sanborn maps. So I just wanted to give you a little history of that property. And that 32 foot, there was a house on that. It was a duplex with a downstairs and upstairs apartment. And when the trash truck went down there, it took the siding off the house just about every time it went down there. and that's the truth. There was no setbacks for that house whatsoever. The mirrors scraped it every time it went down there. And the poor fella that had the property, he had railroad ties that big down his backyard to try to keep them out of his yard to get in and out. So yes, it is very tight to get the fire trucks and all that stuff in there. Firefighter for 40 years. Started right here at Cape Charles Fire Company. I understand the importance of every bit of that. But I really just don't want to see us going to the point of having commercial lots in between residential lots. Mr. Gamino is in a pickle. I don't disagree with that. But the back of that building that he uses for his patio, courtyard, thank you, was where the trash was picked up. The town trash truck went back there twice a week. So as far as the noise and the alleyway being used as a as long as the alleyway, I mean, it's been like that for as long as I can remember. So my main goal, it was just to give you a little bit of history of the area. My mom will probably want to probably help me with that a little bit too. But I'm asking as a town resident not to switch it from R1 to C1.
Time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Chica Galabar.
I am Chica Gullibart, and I live at 245 Mason Avenue in Cape Charles. I'm here to support Miss Judy Loomis and her wishes for a residential lot beside her house. I have lived and own a condo on the 4th floor of the Wilson Building for 10 years and have 2 windows facing Miss Judy's property. Beautiful house and land. One of the most beautiful houses and land in Cape Charles. The residential lot that is currently being used as commercial property is beside Judy's house and close to her windows. I have walked by those lots, and is not in keeping with the town's appearance. And every vehicle going up and down that driveway causes noise in her windows day and night. I support Mrs. Judy, who is most affected by the use of this lot, and the town should also. Miss Judy knows well the history of the lots, having lived there for many, many years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cynthia, you want to speak on this one? I'm going to say no.
Pardon?
Cynthia Emmerich, did you want to speak on this particular hearing? I didn't think so.
No, thank you, though, Katie.
June Perlberg?
No, thank you.
Okay. Is it John Dolph?
Yep. Good evening. My name is John Dolph. I am the general manager of the Hotel Cape Charles since 2017. As you know, limited commercial use on Lot 238 Randolph is critical to the operations of several businesses for many years. When I started at the hotel, I had no idea it was a residential lot. We'll get into that in a moment. We share access with the Cape Charles Coffee House, the Almeida Cafe, Cravings, Eastern Shore Popcorn, and, you know, I didn't include the credit union on there too, because they have to have hot water, and they get that hot water from the propane tank that's located on this lot. So all those businesses, anybody that has water has to have hot water, and they have to have a bathroom. They have to get that from the propane that comes through that lot. Additionally, the hotel electric service is serviced by a large electrical transformer box and a 1,000-gallon propane tank. When that equipment was permit and approved by the town, the property in question was essentially approved for commercial use. It'll never be used for residential use. There will never be a house there. These utilities and the town's 8-foot easement makes it impossible to realistically use the lot for residents. Upon approval, 5 businesses will continue to operate, and 6 to 10 parking spaces will be available on Mason Avenue because golf carts will be housed in the lot as they have been for multiple years. And we already know what parking's like on Mason Avenue. Lastly, my professional perspective. I've worked in many hotels in hospitality for more than 20 years. I've managed Hiltons, Sheratons, Meridots, Holiday Inns. I was a travel consultant for Deloitte & Touche, and I've met hundreds of hotel owners, and I've been in thousands of hotels. I think at some point we have to give a little bit of credit where credit's due. This is a very nice hotel. And if you haven't been in it, I'd be more than welcome to show you around. This is a very nice hotel. Small towns like Cape Charles don't get
very nice hotels. Small towns like Cape Charles get something like what's in Worcester, Ohio, or what's in Duck, Arkansas, or what's in Driggs, Idaho. You don't get a $300 night hotel. So let's keep in mind about that. These towns would do anything to have a quality accommodations like the Hotel Cape Charles. I've never encountered an owner who's been as aggressive to provide a superior product. The financial commitment and the sweat equity that I've seen here is unheard of. The work that we do when we shut down for the season, the financial commitment is comparable to what a corporate hotel would do every 7 years, and we do that every 12 months. Shutting down this work in the off-season has become more about minimizing guest impact than the hotel's own financial well-being. So we're more worried about that impact. Meanwhile, it's all paid off. All the work that the Gaminos have put into it, the work that I've put into it, has all paid off. April, last month for the hotel, and I'm sure for many businesses, was comparable to June 2018. And if you remember June 2018, we were all running around cutting ribbons with Governor Northam. So
Thank you.
please keep that in mind. Thank you very much.
Judy Loomis. Or we can read your written comments if you'd like us to.
My name is Judy Loomis, and this is my first time public speaking in my many, many years. So please bear with me. I didn't bring any notes, but I feel that I do need to tell you that I own the 4 lots, the 2 commercial and the 2 residential that lead up to Mr. Gamino's lot. My house is on the one next to that lot. I've lived there for 50 years. And prior to that, I have lived 2 other places on that same block. So, as my son said, I'm very familiar with the commercial area and the residential area of that block. When Mr. Gamino bought the hotel, all of the services, I guess you'd call it, were at the back of the hotel behind my lot. Later, he bought the lot that we're referring to, the residential lot, put in a courtyard behind the hotel, and has proceeded to, in a gradual way, use that lot as he needed to for the services of the hotel. And he is correct. I have not complained. I can see that expanding the hotel, he has needed more space for things, but it's gotten out of hand as far as I'm concerned. How are the golf carts a necessity for the hotel? It's gotten too much a part of the hotel, is what I'm saying, and it's going to continue to do that, I believe, if you zone it commercial. And that being said, I just don't think that that lot should be commercial between the whole rest of the block is residential, except for the 2 lots that I own on the corner, which are on Strawberry, where that is a residential section. It always has been. So I don't know what the answer to the problem is, but I am asking that you not zone that lot commercial.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
We have no one else signed up to speak, but we do have several written comments that have come in.
To whom it may concern, we just purchased the property at 234 Randolph Avenue. After speaking with the hotel manager, we wanted to let you know that we have no problems with them using their lot for golf carts and trash cans. Sincerely, Sherry Landon. Dear Planning Commission and Town Council, I own and operate Chuckletown Productions, a boutique souvenir store located at 237 Mason Avenue on the ground floor of the Hotel Cape Charles. I've been there for 8 years. My store is one of several mentioned in the application as relying upon the use of 238 Randolph for trash removal. Our trash cans do not fit in our store and cannot move through our store. If they did, they would occupy several parking spaces on Mason Avenue. We rely on a few very basic support services, but reasonable trash removal is a critical component of maintaining a busy retail establishment. 238 Randolph has always been available for these critical to business activities and has been impeccably maintained by the applicant during my tenure there. For these reasons, I wholeheartedly support this application. Lori Klingel, owner, Chuckletown Productions. To whom it may concern, my name is Eddie Campo. I own the Alameda Cafe on Mason Avenue. I'm writing this to show my support for approving the variance request made by Hotel Cape Charles. Myself and 4 other Mason Avenue businesses rely on their alley for trash disposal, propane, and loading and unloading without adding to the traffic on Mason Avenue. Denying their request would have a negative impact on the successful operation of my business as well as multiple others. Thank you for your time. Eddie Campo. Good afternoon. My husband and I own a condominium in the Wilson Building, Unit 203 on Mason Avenue. We purchased the property many years ago, as so many others. We fell in love with the charm and friendliness of the town and spend as much time here as possible. It has recently been brought to our attention that a property owner, Mr. Gamino, is requesting a zoning change from residential to commercial for the property he owns on Randolph Avenue. We strongly oppose to the encroachment of commercial property within the residential area. If this is approved, it will set precedents for other buildings in the area, and we believe this to be in conflict with the comprehensive plan for Cape Charles. Thank you for your careful consideration of this important matter. With kind regards, Amy Townsend and Reverend Clark Cundiff. Dear Katie, Planning Commission and Town Council, I am writing in regards to the request to reclassify the zoning of the property located at 238 Randolph Avenue. As a native Eastern Shoreman, I have watched how the town of Cape Charles has transformed itself back into the days I remember growing up as a child. The historic district is such a wonderful, lively place for friends and family to gather. Having watched the tide turn in Cape Charles over the last several years, I caution turning a property that is located in the residential historic into something other than residential. Doing so will set a precedent for other residential properties in the historic district. And once the door is open, it's open. I strongly encourage a no vote to this request. Thank you for your service to the town, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to voice my concern. Karen Dewar Potts, 502 Fig Street. As a full-time resident of Cape Charles and the family member of a full-time resident of the Wilsons Building, I'm concerned about the news that I've heard regarding the possibility of building a 4-story expansion of the Hotel Cape Charles on top of the Bettis building. First, there is the close-to-home worry about covering residential windows of those with north-facing condos in the Wilsons and the added parking issue on Strawberry Street, which is already often too full for residents to find a spot. But more perhaps importantly, in the long term, is the concern of residential space being possibly rezoned as commercial, and the precedent that sets in town as we struggle to find places for the people who work in the town and county to live even now. I would urge the town to think very carefully about the encroachment of new commercial property within the residential area of historic Cape Charles. Given the information I've gathered so far, I am opposed to this proposed zoning. It does not sound to me to be in the best interest of our town culture. Thank you for your time and consideration. Best, Margaret Van Cleef, Tazewell Avenue. To whom it may concern, I am in favor of the request by Hotel Cape Charles to have the empty lot behind the hotel rezoned to use for golf cart parking and trash can storage going forward. Hotel Cape Charles has been a boon to this town, and I think we should do whatever we can to help them operate the business in the best way possible. Thank you for your consideration. Patsy Harris, 630 Carousel Place. I support the hotel's proposal to rezone the empty lot behind the hotel on Randolph Avenue. We rely on access from that lot for utilities. Sincerely, Eastern Shore Popcorn, Alana Smith. And that is it.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I didn't get to sign up. May I address?
No. Sorry. So, in order to accommodate the town council, can we just go into the next?
We will table further action on this, and we'll come back to it later this evening. We will go on to the next public hearing and move that forward.
So the next public hearing is on conditional use permit 2022-002 application from Cynthia Emrich and Charles Van Dyke at 420 Randolph for an accessory dwelling unit permit after the fact.
Yes, as listed in my staff report, they are seeking an after-fact permit for a 548 square foot accessory dwelling unit, which was constructed in 2018/2019. Our office received a complaint and investigated and determined that the accessory structure met the definition of an accessory dwelling unit and that it was being rented on a weekly basis in conjunction with the main house on the property. In working with the applicant's property owners to resolve the violation, we reached a corrective action plan to have them file an application for conditional use permit and bring the property into compliance with the elements of the zoning ordinance. I have recognized that this occurred during the transition time when the town was crafting and adopting the accessory dwelling unit ordinance, and the applicant has responded swiftly in cooperation with the office to correct this violation. I do want to make you aware that we did agree to allow any confirmed reservations for the summer of 2022 to be honored, and we have obtained a list of these bookings in our office, and the applicant has agreed that no other bookings will be allowed that does not comport with the ordinance requirements. So at this point in time, we would like you to review the application and hopefully consider a favorable recommendation to the town council of this conditional use permit for an accessory dwelling unit after the fact at 420 Randolph Avenue. And as I mentioned, if there are any questions for me, if not, we do have the applicant here if you do need to hear from her, Ms. Emmerich.
Any questions?
I don't have a question, but I have a comment, because earlier we talked about this going forward at this point in time in the future. This is prior to this.
Right.
That's correct.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Your zoning ordinance has not changed at this point, so we are still obligated to enforce the one that's on the books today.
So would the applicant like to come?
I'm happy to answer questions, but I'll let our application speak for itself. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any public comments on this?
June, did you want to speak on this one? So we have, no one signed up and we received no comments on this.
Okay, so
So I'd like to make a motion that we close the public hearing portion.
do you have a second? Okay, we have a motion to close the public hearing in a second. Any discussion?
Just a question. On the conditional use permit accessory dwelling unit checklist, it's very specific about the length of stay. On the letter
That's
from,
for the future.
pardon?
That's for the future.
Yeah,
That's not-
we can talk about that.
Oh, you all want to leave?
Yeah,
I'm saying it's for the future.
Sorry.
yeah, yeah. All right, so we have a motion to close the public hearing in a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Can I get a motion to close the council portion of the public hearing?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you all.
Thank you.
I know Dennis is coming. So where we are now is I do need the planning commission to take us back to our first tabled item, which was 4B, the
Right.
zoning map amendment 2022-001. So is everybody good that we can come back to that item to open discussion on where we wish to go from here?
Please.
Okay.
So-
So with that said, we have moved through the entire public hearing now, and then we stopped, closed the public hearing. And so now it is up to the planning commission to discuss and determine if you are at a position that you can make a recommendation vote of any kind to the town council or not. So we open the floor for discussion.
I'll start.
I'm just,
I did take the time to go look at the property, and John gave me a lovely tour of the hotel, so if you have not toured the hotel, let me recommend that you do that. The courtyard in the back is very nice. However, I have to agree with Katie that at this point, and maybe never, should this be rezoned commercial. However, I don't see why we can't accommodate propane and trash on a residential lot. Because I feel like if we move things around a little bit, take the golf carts out, and just do the propane and trash, put the entrance in the middle and heavily landscape both sides, then we have taken care of the houses on both sides and taken care of the ability of Hotel Cape Charles to continue to operate. And also the businesses nearby. You know, we really have created problems over the years with building in the alleyways back there so that there is no access. So we really have to come up with solutions for some of these businesses. But they don't have to be to the extent of either don't do it or rezone it. I
No.
think we can get in the middle somewhere.
could I follow on to that? Because I think,
That's the chairman. You ask the chairman.
I have to ask the chairman,
me.
sorry. Go. Thank you, Bill. Okay. Yeah, and to say too, you know, I've had, it's an excellent hotel. I've had people staying there and all, so it's not about that. But I also, you know, when I read what residential zoning promises people on property that have that zoning, in the very first sentence, it uses the word quiet. And I just can't see how you can say, okay, this lot is quiet, this lot's noisy, this lot's quiet. No, quiet has to go beyond the notion of a single lot. And the town has been very careful about any properties off of Mason changing from residential to commercial. And so they haven't done it unless they were sure about a lot of things. And there has been an instance in which there There has been a business, probably one of the longest ones in the town, going on 100 years, that has successfully existed in a residentially zoned piece of property. This was purchased by someone along with the property next door to it. We're talking on Jefferson now, Jefferson and Strawberry. And this person requested that these two residential lots be rezoned into commercial. And so we went through all of the business about what the zoning means and how they have gotten by with variances throughout the years. And, you know, wouldn't this be possible some way or another to work these things out without such a radical thing as changing the zoning? Well, I guess in the meantime, she ended up withdrawing the request. That's kind of how it all ended up. But it was a tribute, at least, to the respect to the property owners that are in R1 district that have the homes and everything like that, that this, you know, somehow be worked out, because if it's existed this way, it looks like there, you know, it's been going on okay. So my only question, I guess, at this point is, with the complaint that was last February, if that has to be acted upon within a certain number of days or something, that puts a lot of pressure to up or down the whole thing. But apart from that, you know, we haven't been having many problems, just the way it's been. I'll stop there.
I have a comment to Mike's comment. People keep talking about this as changing it to commercial. That's not what it is. That phrase has a very specific meaning. That means that they have all the rights and privileges assigned to that property that are assigned in the C1 or one of the other C. That's not what this is about. This is about finding some middle ground between residential and commercial. Now, it doesn't speak to anything about the noise you're talking about, but it does speak to how the property can be used. All right? So the noise is still an outstanding issue.
No, it's not the be-all and end-all.
No, I'm just, you know, I just want to make sure we're on the same page, that's all.
No.
Well, okay, it is to a certain degree, you know, as
yeah,
Diane
absolutely
said,
is.
if you limit it to the absolute needs of trash and propane, right, it's no different from a truck going down an alley and making deliveries on any one of the blocks.
Right.
That is going to be expected to generate some noise, but it's
Correct.
limited and it's.
Yep.
It's the same thing that happens all over the residential district on a daily basis,
Right.
multiple times a day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have a question. The propane tank, is there any issue, let's say that the lot was not rezoned. Is there a problem with having this large of a propane tank on an R1 property?
No, and I say this from the sheer fact that was approved through building and its site plan, so town authorities have already given their tacit approval for that. Whether zoning was called out specifically in that process, as we have seen and learned over the years, sometimes the responsibilities of zoning sometimes went to the building official as well. So I can't say with certainty, looking 10 years ago, 11 years ago, almost 12 years ago when that was getting constructed, who was really making zoning approvals versus building approvals. So it's done.
But many of us do have large propane tanks
You're
on our
correct.
residential
And,
property.
and part of this is now that we know so many of other establishments and buildings are being serviced through that, I think one of the things that we said, if we're going to address this, if he's going to put forward an application of some sort to try and clean this up, let's clean it up. So I think that's what you see in the proffers, is trying to address and memorialize what other buildings are having access and usage and privileges to some of these amenities that he has chosen to support and supply
Right.
for that area.
Right.
So more than anything, I won't say that those were violations that we noted. The propane tank was never issued as a violation out of my office.
Right.
We just saw this as an opportunity. If he's going to come forward and he chose to do this as a conditional rezoning, it provided an opportunity to really clean this up and make it good. I don't know how else to say that. Not well, but there it is.
Katie, I have a question for you, based on this right here that you gave us.
Yes, the site plan.
Where the 6-yard dumpster is that an existing thing, or is this a proposal to replace all of the trash cans?
So it started out the end of last summer, when the complaint first came to my office, and we looked at this. He had seven or eight trash receptacles.
Yeah.
And he also had a roll-off, a dumpster of some sort, on the property.
Okay.
And so, yes, over time, we've been talking with him. The dumpster did need to go, just because of where it was placed on the property, and it just was clearly not functional there as a residential lot. Since then, of course, the first site plan that came in still showed how many trash receptacles he would need. And that was done based upon, that's what the town services, that's included within what you're paying for, is a town pickup provision as well, at one of those. And that allowed him to then place it in a way that could be wrangled, so to speak, and enclosed and somewhat screened from the adjacent property owners.
Right.
In further conversations with him, that number just kept getting a little larger and a little larger, and I don't think it's an unrealistic number of trash receptacles that are needed, because you can see how many hotel rooms he has, what may be his future expansion plan. We want the hotel to be successful.
Yeah.
More trash means more people are staying. That's a
Right.
good thing.
And we don't want John getting a hernia, bringing all the
Right.
trash cans in.
But part of it is there a better way? And there is a better way to manage this versus trash receptacles, which is a dumpster. I'm not in a position to require it, and he is entitled to the same privileges that every other business and residence is entitled to under the town code for solid waste.
Right.
So I had that conversation with him, and he was willing to make that change to look at a dumpster and include that in his site plan, and include it as one of the options, as a proffer. Instead of all the trash receptacles, use a dumpster.
Right.
That solves a lot of issues.
It does.
For placement on the site, how it looks visually, how the trash truck comes in and off of it, and it doesn't bring all that stuff out to the sidewalk
Right.
either. So I am appreciative that Mr. Gamino was willing to consider that and include that within his proffers.
Okay, so I'd like to have my say here. I think we know that we have a couple of problems. We have a comp plan. We have, like you said, it doesn't support the comp plan as written. We are currently in the process of revising the comp plan.
Right.
So there could be a mechanism that we can talk.
Right.
And with the contractor and amongst ourselves, but really, longer term, we got a problem as a town here. We definitely have a problem. I mean, that whole block of Mason Avenue, matter of fact, you could probably even go down the 300 block as well, or the 400 block. So, I mean, they have to have access for emergency vehicles.
Yes.
And so, I don't know what the solution is. I mean, you gotta, you have alleys on other places, but we don't have alleys here.
Right.
And, it was mentioned earlier that they're using town property to come in on the west side of Mason there, and then Watson's, they have that. So, I mean, there's just got to be a means here where we can support the businesses. And the town's got to work this, and that's, it's really, it's a town council thing, and it's going to cost money. So that's where I'm coming from. I mean, the applicant has tried to do the best that he can. He's been doing this for almost 10 years, no problems. Life goes on, no problems, and then, so I think there's a happy medium somewhere.
Do we know if the noise complaint was coming from the golf carts at all?
I wouldn't necessarily call it a noise complaint.
Yeah.
I would probably more define it as a nuisance complaint.
Oh.
I don't think I'm calling things unfairly, Mr. Camino. I think there may have been some ill will between the hotel and the people who purchased that property adjacent to the hotel, the residential lot.
Okay.
That maybe relations got a little escalated and reactions heated.
Okay.
And how they each handled it was probably not
It was the dumpster.
in their best way. So,
weren't even there, so it wasn't a noise thing,
it was a nuisance complaint more than anything.
the dumpster, the recycling dumpster that we had. We moved it, to where we could move it, but Davis Disposal didn't want us to move
So-
it.
If you,
No.
if you've ever sat on a balcony, the rear balconies at 300 Mason Avenue, you will really appreciate how loud cars and golf carts are on rock, stone. And that is one reason why I don't see the point in having these golf carts. Number one, he doesn't need them to operate. And two, it's just going to be a real problem as time goes on, because they're going to be used more and more, and it is going to be louder and louder. So I find that we are not going to come up with one solution for this problem all up and down Mason. It's going to have to be piecemeal solutions. And so I think we need to solve this problem for this business now and know that in the future, we are going to run into this time and time again.
Then we get back to the comprehensive plan, though.
Well, you know what? The comprehensive plan can't speak to everything. And it doesn't speak to this situation. The problem that we have with the businesses on Mason, that we allowed some of them to build into the alley, so there is no longer access up and down the alley.
In one of the streets.
What do you want to do? You want to knock those buildings down? I mean, how do we solve this unless we do it piecemeal?
Well, it's one of the
And I
challenges.
actually
Okay.
think he's come up with a great solution by letting others use his. But I don't like this solution.
Okay, Ken?
I think, I agree with many of the things that were said, many of the issues Mr. Camino raised, some of the issues we've brought up. I think there needs to be a broader community discussion about how do we move forward in development? How do we meet the needs for businesses? How do we meet the needs that residents feel for maintaining the historic district? How do residents feel about potentially, what if there was another business further down that said, I want to buy your residential lot because it would make my business more efficient to run things that way? So is that something we would accept in a different situation? I hate to go against where we are philosophically in the comprehensive plan, but we do need to make some way that trash can move in and out, propane can be delivered through this easement, maybe even if the entrance went to 9.5 feet, so that the hotel can continue to prosper.
And leave it at R1?
That's kind of where I'm leaving it now, yes.
Would it need to be a Board of Zoning Appeals variance if we left it at R1?
And it's been at R1 for 10 years, okay? And we had a complaint, and you just mentioned that complaint, and it's gone. Now, yeah, I heard everybody here talk, but still, I mean, the proffers are good. I kind of in agreement about the golf carts, because there are other solutions for golf carts that you can come up with, where they don't have to be on the property if you want to have them. I mean, you can work, we got other people that have problems with parking, and they've made other conditions, so, but, it's a necessity for propane and trash.
Yeah.
I guess the question is, can we meet that necessity within R1 rather than
Correct.
C1?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So, and I say this because, yes, they can continue to use the easement to traverse onto the property. 8 feet is a little tight.
Yeah.
I'm just being realistic, as we've heard, what, clip somebody's house multiple times,
Yes, right.
apparently.
That's why the house isn't there.
That's why I'm not sitting there anymore.
So, and nor do I think we should be seeking to expand that easement at this point in time. So that could still be a solution. One of the things that we could do is, we could recommend that this be tabled for a period of time. Because you do not have to make a recommendation right away. There is time.
Okay.
You have a period of time, sorry, that's why I say these things.
But our tabling it doesn't prevent town council from moving forward.
Yes, it does. They need to receive a recommendation from the planning commission.
Yes, right,
If you
right.
fail to provide a recommendation within the allotted time, they can
Then-
then move forward, because that is deemed a
Tacit
tacit approval.
approval, yep.
Yes.
What exactly could we do if we table it to solve this problem? I mean,
You'd be
what are
very,
you
no,
thinking? I mean,
What-
we
what-
don't have a
what-
lot of time in
what-
that table time.
what, yeah, go ahead.
I've had 3 or 4 things just off the top of my head, but I know there's a lot more digging down in there with time and talking to more of these people we can discover. I can't tell you in advance what more is there. So that's to be determined. That's the reason for doing it.
All right, we still haven't heard the question. I just see it as we're kicking the can down the road.
Yeah.
The question really is before us, can we leave this R1 and leave the easement there with trash and propane delivery? That's as straightforward as I can make it.
Sure. Just give me a minute, I gotta pull my thoughts together, so talk amongst yourselves.
So we have the 100-day deadline is on July 14th.
Yes, July 14th.
And if you can't answer that tonight and it requires it, we can pick it up the next session. But all I'm saying is, to me, that's more straightforward than converting this over to a C1 and locking down proffers that eliminate then expanding into other C1
Yeah.
entities, right?
And here's what I'm thinking, and I just need to think my thoughts all the way through, but I'll go ahead and spew it out tonight and see where it lands. I can't quite consider all these activities legal nonconforming. Definitely when the hotel did its expansion, it kind of kicked it out of the legal nonconforming bucket. However, there's a potential I can consider the uses apart from the hotel. Consider that use of this easement alone, just as a legal nonconforming consideration. And that in and of itself may say, okay, I can, with conditions achieved through a corrective action plan, address this as a violation, close the violation with those conditions imposed. Such as the dumpster, in the location of the dumpster, and any screening that may be associated with the dumpster, and that it be picked up under some schedule that he has indicated to me of twice a week during the season. I don't think that's necessarily needs twice a week in the off-season, but we can have those conversations. And I think that's a step forward that can be handled as part of a corrective action and still, I think, have a reasonable legal hat to hang myself on of saying it's part of what is legal nonconforming to that lot. Yes. I can extend that as well, and within that corrective action statement, indicate these are the properties that would also be allowed to have propane delivery continue through this process. That makes it a little more nebulous for them, and I say that because it's no longer a legal document. The proffers get recorded in circuit court. This corrective action component of a violation does not get recorded in circuit court.
They don't have it now.
So, but to some extent, I appreciate that getting cleaned up because we have seen how staff turnover happens frequently in this county, in this town.
Mm-hmm.
And history gets lost and
Yes.
uses get
In
forgotten.
particular, in your position.
So,
Or town manager.
so part of this is ensuring there are documents. The best way to ensure that there are good records here are things get recorded in the land records. And
Yep.
that's a great place to keep things. because it starts to preserve rights and gives people a chance to argue
Yep.
their authority and ability to do what they're doing.
Right.
So to some extent, that would be a conversation I would need to have with Dave and Mr. Gamina and his attorney to see if there would be some middle ground that we could move this into a legal document to get recorded in the land records as well. I don't know if they'd be willing to do that. So this is some changes of thought process here. Those are my first thoughts, that potentially could give us a path forward to solve the trash component and to solve the propane deliveries and the tank being there and to be serviced, et cetera, for those associated identified buildings and businesses. You're right, the golf carts, that throws it right out of whack. That was not ever part of the legal non-conforming use 20 years ago, 30 years ago. So I am concerned about that, and I say this just from, I don't think we're looking to dump golf carts out onto the neighborhood either. So,
Well, I don't think the answer to that is having golf cart parking on this property, though.
We don't know yet.
No, but there are alternatives that can be,
As in,
well, I mean, there's a parking lot across
yeah,
the street over there, okay?
I totally agree with you.
know,
That's my
okay, that's
point.
and I don't wanna lose sight, and if you'd be willing to hear from Mr. Gamina on this, because I don't own a golf cart myself, I don't live in the county where you can't have a golf cart. But I think it's not just parking, it's the charging.
I understand that,
So.
I understand that, you know, and then there's other, there are other mechanisms. There's 2 golf cart companies in this town,
Right.
right? So,
I understand that,
Okay.
I wholly understand that.
I have a question, Katie. As we look at the other businesses that have access, potentially have access through this, does it cover all of the businesses that lack an alley? In other words, are we solving it for some of the people who don't have an alley, all of the people who don't have an alley?
So I will say one thing. Cape Charles Coffee House used to bring their trash cans from the back, through.
Still do.
Through, you know, and then, but we have like Chuckletown, they can't do it, it won't fit. And so, I mean, you know, but, you know, you could look at this, you know, look out on the front on Tuesday morning and look at how many parking spaces.
I don't
I know
disagree, I
that.
think this helps solve
But I don't
some of
know,
that.
I don't know.
That doesn't, and again, please correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, you're not proposing to allow everyone to collect their trash back behind your lot.
Yeah, just to be clear, the easement that exists is solely for maintenance of the sewer line. That's it. It's not an egress for the town or anything of that
No.
nature. It's solely to maintain
The underground
the
utilities,
sewer.
But the dumpster is solely for
the hotel.
the hotel, correct?
No.
The-
It's for all the business.
Everything in
Oh,
your building.
All the business in your building.
Chuckletown, Seagrass, the Hotel Cape Charles, and the Almeda. Additionally,
So I'm gonna backtrack, because I wanna rephrase this the way your proffer is written. It's the storage and use of town waste management receptacles for the hotel parcel, which is identified, it's 238, I believe?
235.
Is it 230? Yeah, it's on the front page. Well, actually, your subject property is 238 Randolph Avenue. Oh, sorry, subject property is the rezoning. You're right, 235 Mason, and the adjacent properties of 237, 239, and 7 Strawberry Street. So whatever businesses may be operating within those structures would have access for the trash. So the businesses are within 237, 239, and 237.
So all of the hotel is
Are what?
237?
So, hang on, so
The hotel is 235.
Yeah.
Oh, 235.
235,
Oh, okay.
Parcel, it's 235.
yeah.
And then, well,
Almeida's within that building.
yeah, so the old 239 was the blue building, was the Hotel Blue that the bank is in.
Yeah.
And I consolidated all of that. So it's 235 Mason Avenue. Now, there's mailing addresses, but if you're talking about legal parcels,
It's 235 Mason now.
Okay.
Encompasses everything. So
Okay.
the entire hotel and the old blue hotel that the bank is in, that's all 235. I put 239 on there just
Right,
to make sure.
for trash,
That
yes,
was, you know, there wasn't any confusion about that.
right,
235, because 239 used to be a distinct parcel.
right.
That was the blue
Yep.
hotel. So it's just 235 really is 7 Storm Lane.
So
That's the trash.
I am asking a direct question, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman. Are
Go
you intending for your this residential lot that you own to serve as the trash collection point for one of the businesses identified as the Cape Charles Coffee House?
No, they have their own trash.
I just wanted to make it clear, because there seemed to be some confusion starting here. I don't want anybody to walk out of here with confusion here, so.
Right, right.
So, yes, the Cape Charles Coffee House is included, I think, as part of the propane delivery service.
And the sewer.
And the sewer, yes, that's
Right.
part, the sewer is not part of this proffer, the sewer is part of
Right,
that
it's-
easement,
it's
that
just
happened a long
there.
time ago.
Right.
Yeah.
But he is committing for the deliveries for 227, 231, 237, 239, 245, 241, and 235 for the propane and those other related services deliveries
Right.
will be
Is that,
accomplished through this proffer statement.
is that contiguous down Mason, or are there parcels within that do not get that propane?
I don't think there are any parcels in between. I think there is a parcel on the far side.
Yeah.
As you start to approach the Strawberry Street corner, there is still one structure, one building that is not included in this description.
Well, that's the empty building.
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
That's the window building.
The window building, the corner?
right. It's not included in anything. He asked the question, I'm just trying to clarify for everybody.
I'm just trying to
That's
figure out, is it sort of everybody in a row, or is there like a one business not included in that?
Well, it is everybody in a row. It's popcorn, it's table and tonic, it's hotel, it's coffee house. That's propane.
Right, that's what I was,
have to use
yeah,
residential lot to get their permit.
Right.
So popcorn has their own tank, and they have to come across the lot.
to get there.
Table and tonic has to come across the lot. And so that's.
But that currently vacant building after the coffee house and between the residential, the Wilson building, is not being serviced at all this way.
There's nothing in it.
Right, it's a vacant building.
But if that building was sold, that's, I guess that would be the owners.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to speak out of line, but there's like a 3-foot walkway between the Wilson building and the
there's some-
Wendell building that,
Right.
that has access, there's a propane tank to that too. So the owner or the occupants of that building can access. the
Okay,
propane
that's good.
From the street side, so they don't have to come through.
So that's the best opinion I can give you.
Well, okay,
going
so,
off
so the
cuff
way,
here.
the way I see it though is, I'm not making a motion, but I'd make a motion that we table this until she came back with a definitive R1 with these particular activities that are allowed right now, and not go to C1.
There is one thing I'd like cleared up, though, is other related activities.
And other service-related
Okay,
deliveries.
thank you. What would those be?
Not activities, deliveries.
Okay, deliveries, right. What might that be, and to what extent might that be?
Is that Cisco?
Water, Cisco. It's not very often. We're not some huge restaurant.
Cisco goes back there for the coffee house?
Actually, Cisco doesn't.
No, it does not.
So there's just maybe other opportunities where it'd be more convenient and less intrusive to Mason Avenue. So, if I have any of my laundry equipment or other equipment hooked at the hotel service, they would park in the back instead of taking up spaces or tying up Mason Avenue with whatever truck or equipment that they have to use.
but we do have a loading zone out front, which could solve some of that.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Can we be very, very specific about what we want Katie to find out for us? or to present
thought-
to us at the next meeting then?
I thought Paul
A lot
did
of us
that.
have things we want to find out and present, not just Katie. I mean, she's got some, but I think
Well-
all of us have some questions.
I agree with you, but I think we're asking Katie to look into the
A potential
Right, but
zoning,
path of approval.
the zoning and the variance,
legal and all.
yes, definitely, that
Yes,
part.
yes. So what exactly are we asking her to look for?
Was that in the motion, or?
Yeah, okay, so let me make a motion. And,
Yeah.
You know, we're, table this particular activity to allow the interim zoning administrator to explore the possibility of leaving it R1, but then conducting business relative to trash and propane deliveries and whatever miscellaneous other activities are needed to support the operations there. And is that possible?
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second?
Was there a second?
Yep.
Okay.
Further discussion?
Dennis.
Dennis? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And just, because from all what I heard, it wasn't the use of that. The 90% of what we heard tonight was converting it to a commercial
Right,
versus residential.
right.
So if we can keep it that way, Katie, if you can work your magic and make it work that way, then I think the majority of people are gonna be happy, to be honest.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Thank you.
Let's see.
Thank you. All right, so moving on to the 4C on the conditional use permit for 4220 Randolph.
Yes.
So we heard everything. You've read everything. So, are there any further discussions on that?
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead with your question.
Nothing in here speaks to parking for this accessory dwelling unit?
In what way? I'm sorry.
Well, an accessory dwelling unit requires parking.
Right?
But
Is there parking on the lot for that?
Yes.
And is that in the application?
I don't know if it's in her application, but I did my zoning review of it, yes, they were and are accommodating parking on the lot.
All right.
Hold
You
it.
can laugh about this, but what
I'm not
I'm
laughing
saying,
about it, I'm just trying to deal with an after-the-fact
yeah, it's
approval.
the after-the-fact part that we're dealing with.
So,
right, I understand, but we now have it, if the council approves, you can approve these yourself, right? Your department can approve
this
conditional use
particular one,
permits.
no, because.
No, I know not this one, but my point is,
Well, I'm dealing with this one, I'm not
I
dealing.
know you are, but you did not say one word about whether there's parking on this or not. And I'm asking you to have something on here to tell me that.
She wouldn't have given
If there'd been an issue, she'd have said it.
meet their requirements.
Parking's part of the zoning
part of the
requirements, so if
Yeah.
it meets zoning requirements, it meets parking.
And again, I'm gonna sit here, as I told another commissioner, earlier today, this may not fully comply with today's ordinance. It was approved 4 years ago.
What was approved?
That building going in was approved 4 years ago. The town gave approval for that building to be constructed. The
Who?
town,
Who? The
The
town
building-
council, the
the
building?
building department gave approval for it.
Ah,
Before
And
the,
there may have been zoning approval by the people employed here at that time. The records are very inconsistent in this regard. So I can't undo that building. The building is there.
I'm not even asking that.
But you're asking about parking that's allowable on there. So I
Right.
know they've been handling it for 4 years. I can't say that I went in and measured it, everything, no. I know this is a conversation I've had with them. I know it's their intent long-term. They won't be utilizing in this particular fashion. I believe they are working to move themselves here permanently.
Yeah, and there is no parking on this lot. They-
I can't even remember at this
They do
point.
not, they don't have the
all
ability to
on-street.
get to
There's no
this.
off-street, it's all on-street.
Correct.
But there's off-street parking.
And I seem to think, I'm sure I went into that building, and that there were 2 bedrooms, but I can't be certain of that. But in any case, that means that they're required to have 2 parking spaces.
It does not have 2 bedrooms,
All right, so what does it have?
1 bedroom.
Okay, so it needs 1 parking space. So are we saying that this doesn't need 1 parking space?
I think what we're saying is that there is sufficient space on the street to
Oh.
accommodate.
Yeah. There's street parking, there's enough for 3 cars in front of that property.
And that's what it says
I've
in the
actually been
thing.
through
But, you know, it
On-
doesn't,
On-site or street parking is appropriate.
where does it say that? Look in the zoning here.
It's stated in 3C.
4, I want 4.
Yeah, Katie's very good about including the corresponding zoning content that goes along with the CUP.
You know, please don't make this that I'm questioning Katie or her ability.
No, no, it's
That
okay,
is not
it's
what
fine.
I'm doing, and I don't really appreciate
no.
it being that way.
Go
What
ahead.
I am, my only point is, no, wait a minute, let me find the
Take your
parking
time,
space.
Diane, take your time.
I'm going to, if you will not talk for a minute.
It says right here in 3C, other requirements, parking shall be considered on a case-by-case basis as part of the conditional use permit application, ensuring adherence to section 4.5.1.c.6, table of parking standards, using both on and off-street parking areas.
Thank you, Sarah.
And I'm looking at that table, and the table says accessory dwelling units, 1 space per bedroom.
Okay?
And so I will acknowledge,
But I'm saying
Diane,
off-street parking.
I will acknowledge, Diane, it is highly likely that parking is not allowable on this lot. I will state that right now. I'll say I was wrong in making that statement. But I'm telling you, this got approved 4 years ago for a structure to be there and a use that's occurring on there. Whether the town actually knew this was, I think the town knew exactly what was going on. I think they just didn't know how to respond and just let these things happen. I'm just being realistic with you, and I know I'm on Facebook, and maybe a lot of people are gonna respond to this, but I'm just being realistic. They were dealing as best they could. Things got approved, whether they were legal or not. They got approved. This is one of those that got approved. We're now trying the best to our ability to bring them into conformance.
And I'm in total agreement, and I think we're not understanding my point. My point is, not just this one, but when you have a form that people fill out, that these people fill out, it needs to have on there whether or not there's parking
Yes,
available.
I wholly agree. It's in
So-
their site plan that they submit to me. Yes. I wholly agree with that.
And I mean, I think we can only do the best we can on this one.
Yes.
Okay, is there any other discussion on this?
Does the applicant understand, because that's another question I have. They did sign, and I was going to ask her this, and then we decided not to. They did sign the conditional use permit application, which talks about length of stay, but then on her letter, she talks about, we're going to stop renting the accessory dwelling for periods of time less than 31 consecutive days after September 3rd, 2022. We agree to this condition and close an accessory dwelling affidavit, which we checked. The unit will be used by family members or other non-paying guests of the principal property owners. So they understand that it is 31 days. Okay.
Yes, they do.
I just find that a little confusing, but okay, as long as they understand.
They do understand, and as I said, it's their intent. They are working to move their life here permanently, full time. Yes. And they are looking to actually be that as a place of their residence.
The house or the accessory dwelling unit?
Looks like the accessory dwelling unit, yeah.
Okay.
Any other further discussion on this? Do I have a motion to,
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion that we recommend to town council to approve the ADU for 420 Randolph Avenue.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to recommend to town council the conditional use permit for an accessory dwelling unit at 422 Randolph. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
And I apologize if I'm coming across combative. I am tired as all get out. So,
All right. We understand. We understand. Are there any other comments from the other citizen comment?
no, we had no others.
Okay. No unfinished business, new business.
Oh, wait, we don't
Schedule-
have to do this one?
Schedule a public hearing on a conditional use permit, 2022-003. Application from Michelle and Nathan Davison at 211 Madison Avenue for an accessory dwelling unit and an in-ground pool.
So as I noted in the staff report, we are still working with them to address their application components and bring it into full zoning compliance at this point. I have not had time this week at all through the last week as well, because it's been a little focused on tonight's meeting and its agenda and all that we are doing.
Understood.
So, I've actually requested in my motion, recommendation is that you authorize staff to schedule this for public hearing when the zoning application is in conformance and ready to go, so that we can then push that out. So we are still working with her relative to the height identification. I don't know that the height is wrong, I just don't know it. Both for the principal structure and the accessory structure. I do know that the size being sought for the accessory structure is exceeding our allowances. And so I need them to either resize it or go sideways and seek a variance on the size of the accessory structure.
How large are they looking at? Like,
I said it in
728,
770 feet,
728.
something like that.
755, and the max they could have based upon the lots is 660.
No, let me offer a different opinion on the size. If you go to the ordinance, it has if your lot frontage is 80 foot or less, or let me just say less than 80 foot, you're allowed 550.
Right. But they're combining, they're.
So combining, if I'm looking on these two, the dimension I get for two lots there is 79.85 feet, which is less than 80, if I'm reading this right.
Right.
And that says they can limit an accessory structure to 550 square feet.
No, the lots that they're combining are gonna be larger than that.
Well, you got to point then to these two, because this seems to be the lot size.
Then, we need to get a new, whatever this
You
is
got a
called.
plat it's there,
Right.
and it's 139.27, not 140 foot, but, it's a fraction off, and it's a fraction off 80 foot, if I'm reading this right. And it's both back and front, 79.37 foot and 79.85 foot in the front. And given that's less than 80, that tells me 550.
But the other lot is coming in too.
What other lot?
Well, that's why they haven't identified.
Well, there's a split. There's a split
two
on
lots
these
right
two
there.
lots.
Right.
There's a dashed
That's
line
what
that,
I assumed they meant, was these two
they're
lots
looking to-
going right down the middle between the frame house and the proposed addition, right?
They're looking to vacate that dotted line.
I get that, but according to this,
No, and I don't agree with it yet. I haven't
no,
accepted
no,
it.
no,
I
I
know.
know, I know, but wait a minute.
I'm just telling you. I
Okay.
think it's wrong. And when you actually go and do the GIS and you look at this, both of these lots together are greater.
That's-
okay, well, that's not what
I
the
know that.
dimensions are
That's-
showing. All right, I'm
That's
just
why I
saying.
said we're still working with them
That-
on some
that
of
is
their
something-
paperwork.
The other aspect I'd say is,
This surveyor must be,
well,
but anyway.
it's a recent survey, by the way, but in any case, the,
It is.
Be careful what you ask for,
It is a
Katie.
recent survey, but I find fault with it, and yeah, I'm gonna be talking to Craig, I just haven't had a chance to talk to him. He hasn't given me the dimensions for the western half. He hasn't included it in any of his dimensional information.
yes, I
He
got
needs to fix
a pin to a pin.
So I've got a 79, where do you see the additional to the next pin? What's that dimension? Where's that written on here?
I don't. I see
That's my
two
point.
properties on either
There's a
side.
bent pin found, and the other one says a mag nail set in
Right.
concrete curb.
So those are the two pins, and it shows the distance between them as 79.85.
And that's the same in the back.
Mm-hmm.
The pin found and the pipe found.
And I think he's wrong, and I'm telling, and this
That's
is why I
fine,
think
just
he's
fix
wrong.
it, just get it fixed.
Because,
is all.
because the big lot where the house is now, that is actually a traditional lot. It's the western half did get subdivided, got subdivided into 3 different parcels. I don't think he's got the measurements right. I think he's done a sloppy job.
Okay, but if it's
that's
two
okay.
lots side by side, typically 40 foot wide,
Right.
one shaved off a fraction of an inch.
Okay, all
Just,
right.
let's leave it at that. The other aspect, I say, is the proposed garage location is at 15 feet from the principal structure. I have no dimension to say that's the case.
Great, as I said, I am missing information on
Okay,
this
okay.
application.
So in that case, let me ask you a question. You wouldn't present this to us until you have a complete application. So really, we don't need to take anything on this, right? We don't need to take any action.
Then that would have been my follow-up question. Why are we taking precedent here? So anybody can come into your office and go, oh, you know, I've got something here, but let's schedule a public hearing and I'll hope to get,
No, I'm not asking you to schedule a public hearing. I'm asking you to give us authority.
yeah, well, that's the same
To
thing.
schedule it when the
Yeah,
application
and that's the
is
same
fully
thing
complete.
that anybody then can do
Yeah.
in the future.
Right.
You have that authority.
And you can deny it tonight, if that's what you want to do. I'm just trying to move things along, knowing my office had some unusual circumstances over the last month. And I am going to get mad now and get affirmative here. I had personal circumstances where my husband died and kept me out of the office for over a month. So I was unable to do the work that I would normally do on these things in a timely fashion. So I'm asking for leeway and not to penalize the applicant because of what happened in my personal life. But that's okay, if that's what you want to do, I will explain that to the applicant and I will bear that burden myself. I'm asking for some leeway from this group that I will work in this best interest to only move this forward to a public hearing when it is ready. I'm just hoping not to have to wait another month before I can even schedule it for public hearing.
And this will be an exception then to not set precedent.
I'm doing my best not to set precedent. I hope never to have a spouse die again. So.
It's all in
Admitting now, I'm not marrying again. There you go. Sorry if I'm angry, but yes, I'm a little sensitive on this subject. I don't wish to penalize, but I made everybody fully aware when I came on as the interim, at some point, this was going to happen, and I was going to drop out of sight of this job. I had to. And yes, I'm not trying to penalize the people coming forward to do things on their property.
Right.
And this is one circumstance, I think they have some real issues that they're trying to solve. This is not just an expansion for the sake of an expansion.
Right.
They have some real personal circumstances that they're
Yep.
trying to address and improve
Yep.
their property to make it better for their family life to live on this property.
Right.
And so I don't wish to penalize them any further in time delays because of what happened in my personal life. Okay, I'm sorry for yelling, I'm sorry for getting
No,
angry. with
no,
you.
Okay,
no,
all right,
thank
all right, all
Not at all.
right. Katie? God bless you, girl.
All right.
But I don't believe we are penalizing her, are we? I don't want you to feel that way, because
Well,
that's
you're
not
penalizing
true.
you're penalizing the applicant.
Well, the applicant
because of-
didn't give us a
because of me.
full application.
And
And
she
it's
hasn't
not
had
your
time
res-
to check that out.
Okay, never mind.
I understand.
Can I ask you?
I understand that.
Ladies.
I need to end the evening.
Thank
Can I
you.
ask one thing?
No, I think I'm done for the evening. I'm sorry. I think I'm done. I have to be done tonight. You guys can keep on meeting.
Okay.
Tracy, will you continue?
Is there a motion to adjourn?
No,
No.
you were still meeting, and Tracy's going to carry on my behalf.
I then would like to put on the record that this applicant is showing at this point cutting down 4 mature trees, and I'd like just to have them show at some point what they're planning on doing in place of those 4 trees.
Excuse me, we already have a landscaping plan already set to send to the tree advisory committee. That's separate from this application. They'll also have to go to
Okay.
the Historic District Review Board. We're doing step by steps. This was the first step. Katie looks at each step separately.
Yeah, so when the full application comes to us, will it include that landscape plan?
If you would like it to, if that's what you all would like.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katie.
I would.
I need a, want to just say one thing here. You know, the applicant has a disabled son who's 14 years old, and she's trying to help the applicant out. So, you know, and there's some need there.
Right.
So, she doesn't want to do a precedent, and if we don't think that she's not doing a good job, okay, so that's, I'm telling you, that's the impression that's coming across to her, especially with what she's gone through.
Okay, I can tell you what I've gone through. I have had a hell of a life for the last couple of months. I'm just saying, we are not blaming her for anything, but we are saying this is an incomplete application.
That's right, but
We would
when
not
is-
expect her to bring it to us because it's incomplete.
When has she ever given
Therefore,
us
we have nothing that we need to do with this.
She's asking
She
for
will
us-
bring it
she
to
a-
us.
She said, once the earliest opportunity, once the application is in zoning compliance.
And that's always what it is.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion, then we can get a discussion. I'd like to recommend that Planning Commission authorize staff to schedule a public hearing when this application at the earliest opportunity is complete in the zoning compliance for a conditional use permit for an accessory dwelling unit at 211 Madison Avenue.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. That was Mr. Holloway on second. Discussion. Okay, it may not be next month, it may be the month after.
Right.
Because they won't have their stuff.
At a time to be determined.
And so she will, and, you know, that's one of the things she's doing, is she's giving us, you know, she says we have a completed application for a public hearing. So she's trying to make the process compressed, okay, so. Any discussion?
Before we vote, I want to say that my vote is because I feel we don't need to do anything for this, because this is what she would do anyway. So I am not voting against her recommendation, I'm just saying we don't need it. That's all I'm doing.
So I just want to understand, when you say that, you're saying that, yes, the planning and zoning department is competent enough that they don't need our say, they should just go ahead and schedule it when it's complete.
They should schedule it to come to our meeting when it's complete.
And
We
that's what
should never get an application that is incomplete.
And that's what happens. I mean, yeah, sometimes they're missing this or that, and she asked, go ahead, we'll have it done at the next meeting, but it's got to be complete. When was the last time we had an incomplete application? At the public hearing. I'm just saying, so, okay, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay. 8, report of officers and committees. Does anybody have anything to report? Standing staff reports. She gave some stuff on some subdivisions that were approved, and I guess they were approved in Bay Creek. I don't think there was anything on, there's no applications filed with the Board of Zoning Appeals. Next meeting is scheduled for June 7th. I have a conflict. I will not be here,
But then we'll be here.
but you'll be here. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.